Hello guys and girls, this is V and you are watching Movies Hunter. So I recently came across this drama mystery thriller film from 2017 called Voice from This Town, starring Emilia Clarke. So in the opening scene we see Malvina, who is on her deathbed at her ancestral home. She tells her son Jacob that after her death another woman will come to take care of him. Jacob will know the woman by the love she shows to him. Vague, but okay. Malvina then asks Jacob to promise her that he will call Malvina back to him. Soon after that, Malvina dies. Then we are introduced to a young British nurse named Verena, who specializes in children's care. Verena's job is basically to take care of the children and make sure that they get better. It is kind of painful for her to say bye-bye to the children she took care of, but it's part of her job and she has to move on to take care of the other children. 7 months later, Verena arrives at Jacob's house, surprise, surprise, to take care of him. Since Jacob hasn't spoken since her mother died, his father, Santa Claus, let's call him that, has hired many English-speaking nurses in the past to take care of Jacob. Verena is the latest nurse who is going to look after Jacob until he gets normal again. Now, although Verena has no degree, she says that she is loved by the children and has years of experience. Since all the nurses Santa Claus hired in the past couldn't make Jacob speak, Santa Claus is not really that excited by Verena's skills, but he nonetheless hires her. Soon after that, Verena goes to see Jacob, and she was like, "Hello, Jacob, my name is Verena." But Jacob doesn't say a word and is lost in his own world. Wow, you have some great rhymes. Later that night, Verena joins Santa and Jacob for dinner. She tries talking to Jacob, but he is still cold and distant. Santa informs her that Jacob doesn't want her around and will soon ask her to leave. But Verena is confident that she can make Jacob speak again. Yay! Later that night, Jacob gets close to the stone wall in his room, as if he is trying to listen to something. The next morning, Verena begins her treatment and keeps talking to Jacob, but he doesn't show any emotion at all. Verena tells him that when he was about his age, she lost her parents, so she knows what it feels like to lose someone and be completely alone in this world. Later, Verena comes across Lilia, a retired housemaid. Lilia is like so happy to see Verena and requests her to make Jacob speak again. Afterwards, Verena asks Santa to tell her everything so that she can understand why Jacob is not talking. Santa reveals that Malvina got sick and her condition worsened over time, so he went looking for help while Jacob stayed with his mother. But by the time he returned, Malvina had taken her final breath. Soon after that, Jacob distanced himself from everyone and basically stopped talking. Later that night, while having dinner, Santa tells Verena that Malvina's family owned the estate for 1,200 years. Her family owned a quarry which made them a fortune. Ka-ching! However, Malvina chose a different path and decided to become a world-famous piano player instead. During the Second World War, she allowed the quarry to flood as most of the men who worked there died during the war. The next day, Verena goes to see the quarry with Jacob. There, Verena meets the estate keeper, Alizio. Yeah, that's a great name, let's call him Alizio, who lights a flame every day for the long-dead quarrymen. Now one night, Verena goes to check on Jacob and sees him with his ear to the stone wall in his room, listening. Verena tries talking to him, but he runs away. Now the next day, when Verena tells Santa about this, Santa tells her that he knows. He fears that Jacob thinks he can hear his mother in the stones, and Verena is basically shocked by this and tells him that, "I am not qualified enough to look after the boy. Jacob should be sent to the hospital." But however, Santa Claus disagrees. So later on, Verena sees Jacob on the ledge of a tall tower. She immediately rushes to rescue him and endangers her life in the process. Verena then realizes that she cares about Jacob and decides to stay to help him. Now, afterwards, Verena caringly explains to Jacob that the voice he hears is not real, and that it is just his mind playing tricks on him. But Jacob doesn't listen to her and runs to the family mausoleum. If you don't know what that is, it's basically like a building, a large and stately one housing tombs or tombs That's according to Google. I don't know what that is, so I searched for it. Alizio informs Verena that 40 generations of Malvina's family are buried there. There, Jacob is sitting near his mother's tombstone, trying to listen to her voice. Verena tells Jacob, "The dead don't speak, and wishing to hear dead loved ones doesn't make it happen." Lilia starts visiting Verena every night and talks to her about Jacob and Malvina. She eventually develops a close relationship with Verena. Now the next day, Verena goes to see Santa and learns that he is a professional sculptor. Santa was making a sculpture of Malvina but had to stall his work after Malvina's death. Verena is becoming more attached to Jacob and tries listening to the stones, wondering if it truly speaks. While returning back, Jacob runs away and climbs up to a tree. Verena follows him and ends up kissing. Just kidding. Verena follows him and ends up tearing her skirt while climbing the tree. So afterwards, she goes to see Lilia and asks her if she can get an extra pair of clothes. So Lilia gives her a dress of Malvina and thought that was a good idea. When Santa sees her wearing the dress, he gets really angry and tells her, remove it loud! But after noticing the striking physical similarity between Verena and Malvina, he asks Verena to put it on. Weird, but okay. Soon after that, Santa decides to resume working on the sculpture of Malvina. Later that night, Santa asks Verena if she would model nude for him so that he can finish it. And Verena is like stunned by this request and doesn't know what to say, but she eventually agrees to do it, as she too wants to see the statue finished. On top of that, she hopes that this can help Jacob get better. But soon after that, Verena starts dreaming about making love to Santa Claus and can't stop thinking about him. Sit on her lap, bitch! Now, one night, Verena sees Jacob listening to the stone wall in Malvina's room. Verena joins him and is shocked to hear Malvina's voice, realizing that Malvina's spirit is truly living in the stone. That's scary. So Verena promises Jacob that she will look after him. After putting him to sleep, Verena talks to the painting of Malvina and tells her that she is hurting Jacob, so she should stop talking to Jacob and let Verena take care of both Jacob and Santa. Jacob eventually gets close to Verena and starts spending more time with her. Later that night, Verena goes to see Santa, who is still working on the statue. After he finishes work, Verena makes love to Santa. But later on, Santa feels guilty as he thinks he cheated on Malvina. So he decides to fire Verena since Jacob still isn't speaking. Verena then tells him, Malvina wants me here so that I can take care of Jacob and you. She also tells him that she heard Malvina's voice in the stone. But Santa does not believe her and thinks that she has gone mad as well. Verena begs him not to send her away, but Santa has made up his mind. Ho ho ho, you're a ho ho ho. So Verena goes to Jacob's room and tries talking to Malvina through the stone wall, but she doesn't get any response. So she takes Jacob to Malvina's burying place and tells him that they need to help Malvina. She begs Jacob to speak again so that she will not be sent away. But Jacob refuses to speak and runs. Verena goes after him and says, please, please, please speak, my love, speak. She gets so desperate that she even slaps him. Verena realizes that she is suffering from the same fever Malvina had, so she decides to just leave as she thinks Malvina is trying to make her sick. But Santa, plot twist, stops Verena and says, I beg you to stay. We need you. Jacob need you. Verena is now confused and tells Santa that she wants to see Lilia. But Santa informs her that Lilia committed suicide on the day of Malvina's death. Oh, okay, that's creepy. Verena is horrified by this revelation and decides to leave the estate immediately. But as she flees the house, she feels dizzy and collapses on the ground. She is then carried back to Malvina's bedroom. Verena doesn't want to be in that room, but Alizio says that it's best for her. Santa then leaves to get a doctor as Verena's condition is worsening. Verena then begins getting all these hallucinations and she sees that Alizio is entombing her alive. Inside this tomb, she sees Malvina lying next to her, who then runs her hand over her face and body. God, that's creepy. The next morning, Verena wakes up and has seemingly recovered from the fever. She then goes straight to Jacob. Jacob finally speaks and says that he misses his mother. Verena then replies, I am right here. Jacob is then finally smiling again and hugs his father. Verena then says through a voiceover, "I hardly know the woman I see. We are, none of us, quite who we were." Deep! Verena is now playing the piano flawlessly and Jacob is happy to be with her. And basically it turns out that when Verena was hallucinating about being entombed alongside Malvina, Malvina must have sort of passed on her memories and feelings to her. I don't know how that works, but it works in this movie. Anyway, this is why Verena still vaguely remembers her past and can play the piano flawlessly, which she couldn't a while ago. So, soon after that, Santa seals off the broken walls, indicating that they have moved on and Malvina's spirit is finally at peace. So guys, this was the story of Voice from the Stone. What do you think of this movie? Is it too insane? Is it boring? Is it weird? Comment on your thoughts, leave a like, and I'm gonna see you in the next hunt. Love you!